The alien council chamber was silent, save for the soft hum of holographic projectors. Rows of tall, angular beings, the Morvani, sat in their crystalline thrones, their luminescent skin shifting through shades of apprehension. Before them, a projection flickered to life, displaying grainy footage recorded during the recent skirmish with the humans. "Observe," said High Strategist Velshik, his voice like the chime of shattered glass. This was their response to an ambush. The footage began with chaos, towering Morvani battle mechs descending upon a group of human soldiers trapped in a ravine. The humans were clearly outmatched, smaller, weaker, their armor primitive by Morvani standards. Yet, what followed sent ripples of confusion through the council chamber. The humans began to laugh, not just one, but all of them, their voices carrying a strange melodic cadence. They clapped each other on the shoulders, grinning as though the hulking, death-dealing machines before them were a joke. One human, a figure with a jagged scar across his face, wiped tears of mirth from his eyes before barking an order. His squad snapped into action, their laughter fading into sharp, focused determination. Velshik paused the recording. "Explain this behavior," he demanded, his bioluminescent glow darkening to a shade of frustration. "They laugh at death," murmured Councillor Draver, her tone filled with disbelief. "It is no display of bravery," countered another. "Perhaps they are defective, unstable creatures." The recording resumed. The humans, using crude but effective tactics, dismantled the mechs piece by piece. They utilized the terrain, exploited weaknesses in the mech's shielding, and adapted with alarming speed. By the time the footage ended, the humans were victorious, their laughter returning as they celebrated amidst the wreckage. Velshik leaned forward, his six-fingered hands steepling. "This laughter, it is not an anomaly. Reports from multiple battlefronts describe the same behavior. Before every engagement, the humans laugh." "What do they know that we do not?" Councillor Dravar whispered. The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the council watched the humans' uncanny resilience with growing unease. The Morvani had expected humanity to be an easy conquest, a footnote in their empire's expansion. Yet these fragile creatures defied logic, their laughter, a maddening enigma. High Strategist Velshik made a quiet vow. The Morvani would learn why humans laughed before a fight, before it was too late. The planet Zintra 5 orbited a dying sun, its landscape a maze of jagged obsidian cliffs and boiling acid lakes. The humans had established a forward base on this inhospitable rock, their metallic structures gleaming defiantly under the weak, reddish glow. From the shadows of an orbital observation platform, High Strategist Velshik stared down at the base, his expression unreadable. "They're weaker than we anticipated," murmured Field Commander Ratak, standing beside him. Her luminescent skin pulsed faintly with shades of disdain. "Primitive tools, fragile bodies. I see no reason to delay the assault." Velshik didn't reply immediately. Instead, he gestured to the array of monitors before them. Each displayed a feed of human activity. Soldiers repairing damaged vehicles, engineers rigging makeshift defenses, a group of civilians assisting with supply distribution. "They lack power, but not ingenuity," Velshik said finally. "Observe how they adapt." This base was erected within 3 planetary rotations, despite the hostile conditions. Ratak snorted, her glow deepening to crimson. "They are ants scrambling in the dirt. Our war mechs will crush them." Velshik turned, his bioluminescent eyes narrowing. "The ants laugh before they fight. You would do well not to underestimate them." On the surface of Zintra 5, Captain Elias Drake leaned against the railing of the command center's observation deck, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The air was thick with the acrid stench of sulfur, and the oppressive heat made every breath a labor. "We're running on borrowed time," he said, addressing his second-in-command, Lieutenant Marina Voss. "Marina," A wiry woman with sharp features and an ever-present scowl nodded. Scouts report movement on the ridge. Morvani forces are mobilizing. Drake sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. Figures. They've been watching us like hawks. How's morale? Marina smirked. Pretty good, considering we're stuck on a volcanic hellhole with an army of glow sticks breathing down our necks. Drake chuckled. Glow sticks, huh? I'll have to remember that one. The sound of laughter echoed below, where a group of soldiers were gathered around a makeshift grill. Despite the dire situation, they were joking, sharing stories, and tossing scraps to a curious lizard-like native creature that had wandered into the camp. They're laughing again, Marina said, her tone softening. They always do, Drake replied. It's how we cope. When the universe throws everything at us, we laugh, makes it easier to hit back. From the Morvani observation platform, Velshik and Ratak continued to monitor the humans. A new feed displayed the scene near the makeshift grill, where the soldiers' laughter rang out like a defiant anthem. Explain this, Ratak demanded, her frustration evident. How can they remain so undisciplined in the face of annihilation? Velshik tilted his head, his glow shifting to a contemplative green. Perhaps it is their nature. Chaos and emotion are woven into their essence. Ratak growled. Emotion is a weakness. They will fall like all the others. Velshik wasn't so sure. In every battle report, humans had defied expectations, not with superior technology or brute strength, but with creativity, determination, and an uncanny ability to turn the tide in their favor. They lack discipline, but they compensate with unpredictability, Velshik mused. We must approach this carefully. The tension on Zintra 5 reached a boiling point as the Morvani fleet descended. Their war mechs, towering machines bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields, lined the ridge, casting long shadows over the human base. Inside the command center, Drake and Marina stood before a holographic display, mapping out the enemy positions. They're going for a full frontal assault, Marina observed. Drake nodded. It's their style. Overwhelm the target with superior firepower. But we're not playing their game. He tapped a series of points on the map, highlighting choke points and weak spots in the terrain. We can use the lava flows to funnel their mechs, and if we rig these rock formations... Marina grinned. You're thinking of turning their tech against them, aren't you? Always, Drake replied. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like. As the Morvani mechs advanced, Velshik observed from his flagship, his confidence wavering. The humans' laughter still echoed in his mind, a haunting, inexplicable sound that defied logic. Prepare for planetary bombardment, he ordered. Suddenly, a burst of static interrupted the fleet's communications. A voice crackled through, human, bold, and mocking. This is Captain Drake of the Earth Defense Corps, the voice declared. Welcome to Zintra 5. Hope you packed sunscreen because things are about to heat up. Velshik's glow flickered with confusion. They're taunting us, Ratak snarled. They mock their destruction, arrogant fools. But as the first wave of mechs descended into the ravine, it became clear the humans were no fools. Explosions rippled through the terrain, collapsing the rock formations and redirecting rivers of molten lava. The Morvani mechs faltered, their shields unable to withstand the unexpected assault. In the command center, Drake watched the chaos unfold with a grim smile. Laugh now, he muttered, and then hit them where it hurts. The battlefield on Zintra 5 was a mosaic of fire and smoke as the first wave of Morvani war mechs crumbled under the humans' ingenuity. From the vantage point of the Morvani flagship, High Strategist Velshik's bioluminescent glow shifted to an ominous black, a shade that betrayed his growing unease. Unacceptable, Velshik bellowed. These creatures were supposed to be simple prey. Field Commander, Ratak clenched her mandibles, her luminescent patterns flickering erratically. Deploy the second wave. Their tricks won't work twice. On the surface, Captain Drake surveyed the battlefield from a fortified observation post. His team had used the planet's volatile geology to their advantage, triggering a series of controlled eruptions that cut off the advancing Morvani mechs. Now their temporary victory was giving them precious time to regroup. Lieutenant Voss, status report, Drake called over the comms. Marina's voice crackled through. The lava flows have bought us a few hours, tops. But they're adapting. Fast. Scouts report a secondary force moving around the northern flank. Drake frowned. They're learning. He turned to his team, their faces smudged with grime but alight with determination. All right, people. Plan B. We draw them in and hit them where it hurts. Engineers, get those EMP charges ready. Marksmen, you've got one job. Find their weak. In points and exploit them. Everyone else, dig in. We're not going anywhere. In the observation deck of the Morvani flagship, Velshik studied the humans' response. The secondary wave of mechs had begun their flanking maneuver, but the humans had anticipated it. Instead of retreating or panicking, they had turned the terrain into a series of deadly choke points, using makeshift explosives and EMP bursts to disable the mech's shields. These primitives are fighting like a hive mind, Velshik murmured, his glow shifting to green, a color of curiosity. No single species should be this adaptable. Ratak growled in frustration. Adaptability won't save them when the full force of our fleet lands. Velshik turned to her, his bioluminescence darkening again. Perhaps, but their actions defy every projection. They lack the resources, the strength, even the discipline, and yet they resist. Why? Ratak had no answer. As the battle raged, the Morvani forces began deploying advanced weapons, plasma bombardments and seismic disruptors that sent shockwaves rippling through the human base. Yet the humans refused to yield. In a makeshift infirmary, medics worked tirelessly to treat the wounded. One soldier, his leg mangled by shrapnel, clenched his teeth through the pain. His hand shot out, grabbing Marina Voss's arm as she passed. "Lieutenant," he rasped, "promise me you'll make them pay." Marina knelt, her sharp features softening for a moment. "We will. You have my word." In the command center, Drake coordinated their next moves. "Focus fire on the mechs at the bottleneck. If we can disable their heavy units, we'll force them to pull back. And if they don't," one of his officers asked. Drake smirked, his voice carrying a grim determination. "Then we'll make sure they regret staying." The humans' ingenuity shone as they deployed an improvised weapon, a series of autonomous drones equipped with experimental jamming devices. The drones buzzed into the fray, emitting high-frequency signals that disrupted the mech's targeting systems. On the ridge, a young engineer named Riley controlled the drones from a battered console, her fingers flying across the keys. "They're locking onto the signal!" a soldier shouted. "Good," Riley replied with a grin. "Let them, that's exactly what we want." Seconds later, the drones self-destructed, releasing an electromagnetic pulse that short-circuited the entire wave of advancing mechs. The remaining units faltered, their systems scrambled. In the observation deck, Velshik's glow darkened further. "They've weaponized chaos. This is not strategy, it's madness." Ratak slammed her fists onto the console. "Madness or not, it's working." As the Morvani regrouped, a strange scene unfolded on the battlefield. A wounded Morvani soldier, separated from their unit, lay trapped beneath the wreckage of a disabled mech. A human medic, armed only with a sidearm and a medkit, approached cautiously. The Morvani hissed, their bioluminescence flickering weakly. "You dare approach me, human?" The medic knelt beside them, scanning the injuries. "I dare to save a life, if that's what you mean." "Why?" "I am your enemy." The medic shrugged. "You're also alive. And until you give me a reason, Otherwise, that's enough. Back at the human base, the rescued Morvani was brought in under guard. They observed the humans with wary curiosity, their bioluminescence pulsing faintly as they watched soldiers work together to rebuild and care. "For their wounded, why do you do this?" the Morvani asked Drake. "You know you cannot win." Drake met their gaze, his voice steady. "Because we don't fight to win. We fight to survive. And that makes us dangerous." As the humans continued to resist, Velshik found himself increasingly unsettled. Reports from the ground painted a grim picture, entire squads of Morvani troops falling to improvised traps, their advanced technology rendered useless by the humans' ingenuity. "What drives them?" Velshik whispered to himself. He turned to the rescued soldier, now recovered enough to provide intelligence. "You were among them. What did you learn?" The soldier hesitated, their glow flickering uncertainly. They are not like us. They are bound by something more than strategy or logic. They fight not just for themselves, but for each other. They laugh in the face of despair. It is unnerving. Velshik's glow dimmed further. Then they are more dangerous than I feared. The battlefield on Zintra 5 was eerily quiet for the first time in hours. Smoke billowed into the rust-colored sky, and the distant sound of crackling lava flows echoed through the ravines. For Captain Elias Drake, the silence was a warning. This was the calm before the storm. From his command center, Drake observed the enemy movements through a flickering holographic display. The Morvani fleet was amassing its full might, with towering war mechs, aerial gunships, and infantry units converging on the human base. This wasn't just an assault, it was annihilation. "They're throwing everything they've got," Marina Voss muttered beside him, her jaw clenched. "This isn't a battle anymore, it's a message." Drake nodded grimly. "And we're about to rewrite it." High strategist Velshik stood aboard his flagship, his bioluminescence flickering with determination. "Begin the final assault," he commanded. "No more games, no more underestimating them." The Morvani forces advanced with brutal precision. Their mechs thundered down the ravines, their plasma cannons reducing human defenses to rubble. Overhead, gunships unleashed devastating strafing runs, forcing the human soldiers to scatter and regroup. Yet, despite the overwhelming firepower, the humans held their ground. They moved with calculated precision, deploying hit-and-run tactics and using the terrain to their advantage. Each time the Morvani thought they had gained the upper hand, another ambush or counterattack shattered their momentum. Velshik watched in frustration as the humans continued to defy his expectations. "What drives them?" he muttered. "Why? Won't they break?" In the heart of the chaos, Drake rallied his troops. His voice carried over the din of battle, calm and commanding. "This is it, people. Everything we've done, everything we've fought for, it comes down to this moment. They think they've won. Let's prove them wrong." The final phase of Drake's plan was as bold as it was dangerous. Using the last of their supplies, the humans had rigged a network of underground tunnels with high-yield explosives. The goal was simple: draw the Morvani forces into the trap and detonate it, taking out as much of their army as possible. "We'll give them something to remember us by," Marina said with a fierce grin as she armed the detonators. Drake nodded. "And if we're lucky, we'll live to see it." As the Morvani mechs closed in, Drake's forces launched a desperate counter-offensive. Soldiers armed with makeshift rocket launchers targeted the mech's joints, while snipers took out exposed operators. Engineers worked frantically to repair damaged defenses, their hands trembling but steady. From the command center, Drake monitored the progress of the enemy's advance. The trap was nearly set, but they needed more time. "Hold the line," he barked into his comm. "Just a few more minutes." Time slowed as the Morvani breached the outer perimeter. One of the towering mechs loomed over the command center, its plasma cannon charging. The ground shook as its massive footstep sent debris flying. Drake didn't flinch. He grabbed a nearby rifle and fired at the mech's optical sensors, temporarily blinding it. "Marina, now!" Marina's voice came. Over the comm, sharp and clear. "Detonating in 3, 2, 1. The ground erupted in a blinding flash of light and sound. The tunnels beneath the battlefield collapsed, creating a chain reaction that sent shockwaves rippling through the Morvani ranks. Mechs toppled like dominoes, their heavy frames crushed under falling debris. Gunships veered off course, colliding with each other or the jagged cliffs. In the observation deck of the Morvani flagship, Velshik watched in stunned silence as his forces were decimated. "Impossible," he whispered. "They sacrificed their own ground to destroy us." The humans had turned the very terrain into a weapon, an act of sheer audacity and desperation. And it had worked, but victory came at a cost. As the explosions died down, Drake realized that the Morvani flagship had deployed its final weapon, a massive orbital cannon, its energy core glowing ominously as it prepared to fire. "They're going to take us out from orbit," Marina said, her voice tight with fear. "We don't have anything left to stop them." Drake's jaw tightened. "Maybe we do." With a grim determination, Drake commandeered one of the remaining shuttles. His plan was simple: take the shuttle directly to the flagship and disable the cannon from within. It was a suicide mission, and he knew it. Marina grabbed his arm as he prepared to leave. "You can't do this, Elias. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Drake said quietly. "They won't stop unless we stop them. And if we don't, none of this will matter." She released him reluctantly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You'd better be laughing when you get up there." Drake managed a small, wry smile. Always, Drake's shuttle weaved through enemy fire, a lone speck of defiance against the vast Morvani fleet. He dodged plasma bursts and debris, his hands steady on the controls. As he approached the flagship, he activated the shuttle's remaining payload, a high-powered EMP device designed to disable the ship's systems temporarily. The shuttle breached the flagship's hangar bay, skidding to a halt amid a swarm of Morvani soldiers. Drake emerged, weapon in hand, and fought his way to the cannon's control room. His body ached, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he pushed forward. In the control room, Velshik confronted him, his bioluminescence pulsing with fury. "You dare invade my ship?" Drake smirked, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about winning. It's about making sure you never forget who we are." With a final surge of strength, Drake activated the EMP device, overloading the cannon's energy core. The resulting explosion engulfed the flagship, sending it hurtling toward the planet's surface. On the ground, Marina and the remaining soldiers watched as the flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light. The surviving Morvani forces retreated, their confidence shattered. "He did it," Marina whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of grief and awe. The humans had won, but at a heavy cost. The battlefield was silent once more, save for the crackle of flames and the faint hum of victory. The battlefield was quiet now, the smoke settling over the scorched landscape of Zintra 5. The acrid air was heavy with the weight of victory and loss. Humans moved among the wreckage, tending to the wounded and collecting their dead. The silence was somber, broken only by the occasional hum of makeshift machinery or the murmured words of survivors. Marina Voss stood on the edge of the crater where the Morvani flagship had fallen. Its shattered remains jutted out of the ground like broken teeth, still glowing faintly with residual energy. The cost of the battle was etched into every line on her face, but her gaze was steady as she spoke into the comm system. "This is Lieutenant Marina Voss, acting commander of the Earth Defense Corps on Zintra 5. The Morvani forces have retreated. Our position holds. Captain Drake..." Her Voice faltered, and she swallowed hard before continuing. Captain Drake made sure of that. The words hung in the air, a testament to the sacrifice that had turned the tide. In the aftermath, a group of captured Morvani soldiers was brought into the human base under heavy guard. Among them was Velshik, his once proud bioluminescence, now a dim, flickering blue, the color of resignation. He was brought before Marina, who stood flanked by human soldiers, her expression hard, but not unkind. Velshik studied her, his luminous eyes filled with something new, not anger, but respect. "You've won," Velshik said, his voice quieter than before. "And yet you mourn." Marina nodded. "We always mourn, even when we win." Velshik tilted his head, his glow shifting slightly. "This empathy, it is your strength and your weakness." "Maybe," Marina replied, "but it's what makes us human. It's why we laugh before a fight. Because if we can still find joy, still hold on to what matters, then no enemy, no matter how strong, can truly defeat us." Velshik was silent for a long moment, then bowed his head. "You are unlike any species we have ever encountered. You fight not for conquest, but for survival, for each other. I see now why we failed." The surviving soldiers gathered around a makeshift memorial, a crude structure of salvaged metal adorned with names etched by hand. Marina stood at its center, holding Drake's battered helmet. She raised her voice, addressing the crowd. "We came here as explorers, as builders, but when the time came, we stood as fighters. We stood as one." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. "Captain Elias Drake showed us what it means to never give up, to never back down. We honor him and all those we've lost by carrying on." The soldiers stood in solemn silence, then began to laugh, not out of disrespect, but as a way to honor their fallen leader. The sound spread, a ripple of resilience and defiance, echoing through the base and into the alien skies. The events on Zintra 5 rippled across the galaxy. The Morvani, once a dominant empire, withdrew from further incursions against humanity. Reports of their defeat spread among other alien species, painting a picture of a species unlike any other. Fragile yet unyielding, primitive yet ingenious. For humanity, the battle was a turning point. They had proven that they could not only survive, but thrive in the harshest conditions. Diplomatic overtures followed from other alien races, curious and cautious, eager to understand the species that had defied the odds. Back on Earth, the story of Zintra 5 became legend. The name Elias Drake was etched into the annals of history, a symbol of humanity's resilience and unbreakable spirit. As the humans on Zintra 5 began rebuilding, Marina stood at the edge of the base, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky burned with vibrant colors, a stark contrast to the devastation below. A young engineer approached her, holding a data pad. "Lieutenant," the engineer said, "we're picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's not Morvani." Marina's brows furrowed. Another species? Maybe. Or something else entirely. Marina looked out into the horizon, her lips curving into a small, determined smile. Well, whoever it is, they'd better be ready. Because we are. The story of humanity on Zintra 5 was far from over. This was just the beginning.